Okay, here we go. Let me get All right, guys. So we will be talking with. Hey, what's up?
How are you?
I'm good. How have you been?
Great. I just got out of some fire and ice, and so I'm actually I'm trying not to shiver.
We
But
were just talking about ice baths.
yeah, it's the way to go. It feels great on a day like this, so all about it.
Heck yeah. Well, do you want to introduce yourself really fast and let everyone know who you guys are? And
Sure. My name's Taylor Collins. My wife, Katie, my daughter, Scout, and I are first generation ranchers. We own and operate a multi-species regenerative ranch out in Fredericksburg, Texas. So that's out in the hill country. It's about an hour and a half from Austin. And we raise bison, turkeys, broiler chickens, laying chickens, geese, ducks. We have a honeybee apiary. And then at any given point in time, we have a couple 100,000 beating hearts on the property in the form of wildlife, whether that's migratory birds, native species. We try to create a plate at the table for everyone in this ecosystem to participate in this regeneration process. And so that's what we're doing, and we're having fun doing it.
I love it. I mean, I'm totally geeking out right now. So we met you guys, must have been like a month ago, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, Jared, we can never leave this place. This is amazing. And I'm so obsessed with everything that you're doing and your journey. Do you mind just chatting really quickly? Like, I'm sure it's not a quick story, but your journey on how, because to start a regenerative farm, like that is a particular mindset. And I love where you started and where you are now. I think it's just really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a crazy journey. And if you would have asked me earlier in my life if I would be operating a ranch, being a land steward, I never would have imagined that potential path in my future. And in this journey, we landed somewhere to where our bodies did really well with high quality pasture raised, grass fed meats. And so we incorporated a lot of that recovery, and our performance skyrocketed. And so that led us to this point where we were kind of creating this concept where, like, okay, if we eat meat that's good for our bodies, those animals have to be raised in ecosystems in which they were biologically intended to. So it's like good for us, good for the animals. And it just felt like there was a missing component. And that missing component was introduced to us by a guy named Alan Savory in a TED Talk about 6 years ago. And he had this TED Talk called "Cows Can Save the Planet." And both Katie and I were, huh? I never heard anything like that. And
Yeah.
the conventional, like, livestock is actually degrading our planet. But Alan Savory said it's not the animals; it's how the animals are managed or mismanaged. It can be really positive or really negative. And introduced us to this concept of soil health and how all economies, all nutrition is based on soil. It's our most valuable natural resource. And so that just geeked us out down this new path, this new career in life, to where we really dedicated and devoted all of our intention and focus and efforts to helping spread this idea of soil health, why it's important, how agriculture can be very collaborative with Mother Nature. And when we do it in her image, we can produce really nourishing food, feed our population, take care of our animals, and even take care of our climate.
No, and that is just amazing. And the fact that you took something and you ran with it and then also created, like, you could have just been like, yeah, it's fine, but to then give back to the earth and be like, you know what, I'm going to be a positive contributor to this planet and do something with the knowledge that I have and create like great meat, create a great soil, I mean, touring your ranch and having a conversation about the soil. And now, in Texas, we have these flash floods all the time where all of a sudden there's a heavy rainstorm and there's a flash flood. But the way that you guys have really nurtured the soil with the bison and all your beating hearts, as you say. And now that you have like a steady creek bed, and the water now holds, and the integrity of the soil now is intact. And I think that is, I mean, it's honestly like my dream. So it's like you're living the life that I'm like hoping I can, I just want to live vicariously through you guys. And I just love how interconnected it all is. The fact that like all of that then we consume and we eat, and that's in our gut, and that feeds our brains and our bodies. And it's so fascinating. I love geeking out over this.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a beautiful thing. And when you think about it, this has been in place. Mother Nature has been working on this collaborative system for 4.5 billion years. And it wasn't until the invention of modern industrial agriculture that we started messing up this beautiful, harmonious system that was put in place. And so, anything new here, we're actually trying to restore, and we're trying to create a foundation for Mother Nature to do what she does best, which is heal herself and heal us as a human population, civilization, and then all the other communities, whether it's the community in the soil or the native migratory species that participate in this community. Mother Nature can take care of all of us if we take care of her.
Yeah, 100%. There's some people asking about the bison in the background, and if you don't mind, I would love to just talk a little bit about regenerative farming. And I know that I'm sure for some people it's a bit jarring, but I personally love confronting problems and choices that we make. And one of the things, like for me and my family, we are primarily meat eaters. And you were saying you've been vegan before in your life. I like to eat more vegan, but I do consume meat. And so what I really love about you guys is that you harvest your own meat, and that's part of the biodiversity and part of regenerative farming. And I think it's personally, I think it's really cool to be able to take your own meat, harvest the meat, honor the meat, rather than going to a grocery store and not having a relationship with that food and understanding where it comes from. So I would love for you to like kind of talk a little bit about that regenerative farming and like why there's a bison in the back on your wall, if you don't mind.
One of our bulls, and so that would have been when he was alive, about an 1,800-pound bison, and males can get that big when they're about 8 years old. So he was a mature breeding bull. But typically we're harvesting and we're eating animals that are 3 years old. That's kind of the sweet spot for a grass-fed animal, and we want them to be about 900 pounds. And so, yeah, regenerative agriculture. I mean, when you look back at how humans have cultivated and managed land historically, it's been very degrading. And matter of fact, I'd say the way that we farm industrially and conventionally, even in organic, it's all about how much can we extract from the land as quickly as we can extract it, but we forget to put back in what we took. And so we're racing as a civilization towards a cliff or an edge in which our entire food system is on the verge of collapsing. And now it doesn't have to be that way. Regenerative agriculture gives us this potential to heal, restore, and nurture the land in a way that which we can rebuild. So we can produce food, we can nourish our communities, we can heal our bodies, but we can also heal the land if we ranch in nature's image. And so setting a foundation for a virtuous cycle that gets better and better year over year. And at the end of the day, all of our decision, all of our management on this property is about how can we make the land better? How can we capture more atmospheric carbon, store it in the soil? How can we improve the infiltration of our rainfall, restore aquifers? It's very holistic because everything is connected, right? Nothing is in isolation. That's not how Mother Nature works. And so one of our big objectives, it's like in the history of our civilization, humans have never been as disconnected from the source of their food, right?
Yeah.
In millennia before us, communities would come together and they would celebrate an animal's life, and they would harvest that animal and they would share it and they would consume every little bit of it. And they showed reverence and gratitude. And that's something that's been lost. And it's really important because 40% of all of the food that is purchased in the United States goes to waste. And
Yes.
that is an abomination. That should never be, because even plants are sentient beings. And so for us to take a life and to take a sentient being, and then not honor it by wasting it, I can't think of a more insulting thing to do. And so at the ranch, we host community events where people come out and they can see, well, everything from a bison being born with some of our calves tours to the very end of that life cycle. And the purpose is really to connect people and to remind them that there's a natural rhythm in place that goes birth, life, death, decay, and then that's cycled and it's repeat. And that's nature's course that's been in place since the starting of time. And so it is really important for consumers, especially if you eat meat. At one point in your life, you need to be present and you need to be aware that your decision as a carnivore impacts an animal's life. You take that life, and when you're there and when you participate in that journey, in that process, you have the reverence and you can thank that animal, it's very special, and it completely changes your perspective of an ecosystem and fills your heart with so much gratitude and an abundance of gratitude and grace to where you don't ever waste food. It puts everything into a new perspective.
Oh, 100%. And what advice would you give someone maybe, who lives more in an urban environment? What advice would you give them as far as, maybe shopping, or how would they consume, or what should they look for when consuming foods to be more in the regenerative space?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look for meat. I mean, the regenerative movement is this big. It is where organic was 40 years ago. And so we're just at the start of this amazing consumer revolution. And we think that now is a point in time where brands are starting to actually market and talk about this and have this discussion. And so you can actually find some select products in like Whole Foods or natural grocers that have regenerative claims. And that's going to be like your top tier claim, above organic, above grass-fed, above sustainable. And so that's really what I would encourage people to do, and start supporting and looking for regenerative ranches and farms in your community to get behind. And there's no more powerful vote than your consumer dollar when you're purchasing food. And so get out there and support brands that are aligned with your own values, and help us, just like with Town, start a community, a virtuous community where we're focused on healing a system that's currently broken.
It's amazing. I could talk about this all day. It really makes my heart sing. And I think it's just bringing such a connection to nature, into the world, and such a respect. I really love watching your stories, because you really get the full 360 degree of how these animals are born, and like you say, the whole life cycle from being born to roaming the ranch to when they leave this world, and the consumption of them as well, the way that you guys use every single piece of that animal and honor that animal. And I love learning, because there are things that we're like, ew, why would we eat that? And then the way that you make it, you normalize the way we eat, or how we should eat, and respecting the animal, or even parts that, like for instance, the tanning of the hides and using brain matter to use the animal skins so that then you could use the animal skins. It's all so interconnected and so fascinating, and nature is just so wonderful and incredible in that way.
Right. Yeah, and like as you're mentioning, using the whole animal, some of the most nourishing parts of the animal are cuts that we don't typically consume as humans, right? And historically, they would have been cherished and prized and coveted. And nowadays, we're consuming like very limited parts. Like we'll all fight for ribeyes and tenderloins, but no one's really raising their hand to be the first one to eat a liver. And so another big kind of component of this and really honoring the animals, like you said it beautifully. It's just consuming the whole thing, making sure nothing goes to waste. And if there is something that's inedible, because some of the intestinal tracts, they're not good for humans to eat, we'll return that to the earth and we'll put it back into the soil, and it will feed an entire underground community and help that community thrive.
I know, I just love it. And again, for those of you who are just new to regenerative farming, the soil is so huge, not only to our planet and helping, consume carbon dioxide and gases, but also to our own gut biomes, because when we consume the plants and the animals from that, who feed off that soil, goes into our own bodies and helps replenish our guts, which are pretty destroyed with processed foods and all kinds of glyphosates and stuff, which it's a balance, and no one is saying don't go to a grocery store. You should absolutely go to a grocery store, but just making mindful decisions and finding that balance. And I just, again, like I could geek out on this all day. Well, is there anything else that you feel like people should know about regenerative farming, or, you know, if someone wanted to get started, or how they can do it on a small scale, or anything to that effect?
Absolutely. I would encourage people, you know, like it's all contextual based. So what we do here in Central Texas is very different than someone would do managing maybe like 50,000 acre ranch in Montana, or a sheep farmer in Iceland. Like it's all very relative to your ecosystem. But there's 5 principles in Mother Nature. And again, if you ever have questions, look into Mother Nature's wisdom, because she freaking got it right. Human technology will never be better than what she's put in place for the last 4.5 billion years. And so we look at things like very simple. If you're an urban farmer, or if you're managing 100,000 acres of land, these 5 things really quickly, I'll talk about them, but it's cover bare soil. We don't ever want bare soil to exist. That should never exist in nature. Encourage biodiversity. Surprise, right? Like where in Mother Nature will we ever find a monoculture? Nowhere. Have a green growing plant year round. So there should never, in a dormant season, plant a cool season plant. It'll capture that atmospheric carbon like you were talking about. Incorporate animal impact, right? Because again, if you look into Mother Nature, there's always animals present. They're an important part of an ecosystem because they cycle nutrients. And then number 5 is minimize the disturbance of your soil. So those are 5 key principles that anyone on the planet can adopt, whether it's your backyard or it's 100,000 acres, and that will move you in the right direction of going regenerative.
I love those nuggets. I'm so glad we're recording this, because I cannot wait to like listen to it and write all of it down. This is so amazing and so informative. I certainly feel like, I don't know, I feel nurtured and nourished just from this conversation. And I appreciate it. And I can't wait to keep this conversation going more. And I hope you don't mind me continually stalking you on Instagram. Oh, shoot.
To know you,
What,
yeah,
sorry,
and I'm
I
really
just
proud
lost.
of you too for. Oh no, I was just saying I really am proud of you, and thank you for creating a community to where people can come together and accelerate this movement.
Oh,
Very important.
no, well, likewise, you're a badass, and I can't wait to keep working together and continuing this conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Awesome, cool. Well, have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye, Taylor.